All right, so welcome. Today I'm excited to have Sarah Collins on Friends You Keep. Now, a little bit about Sarah. Sarah is passionate about helping women level up their health and reach their fitness goals with a sustainable, holistic approach to complete body wellness and confidence. Sarah specializes in helping women support their hormones, digestive health, and also develop an understanding how to use nutrition to support their body as an individual and improve body composition. Who doesn't want that? She also offers and utilizes functional lab testing. We're going to get into some of that to help women to get to the root of their hormonal issues. Sarah's work has helped hundreds of women, probably almost thousands now, I bet you. You're probably in the thousands, to women to step into symptom pain-free periods, better energy, sex drive, skin, say goodbye to bloating and food sensitivities, feel confident in their nutrition choices and knowledge on how to support their body and build the body of their dreams. Now, she has a number of certifications. I actually think your certification list is even longer than this now, so it might actually take me 10 minutes to read all this off. But she's a certified SIBO master practitioner and doctor approved as well. She's a holistic nutritionalist. She's a clinical nutritional practitioner, and she's also certified holistic nutritional health coach. She's a sports nutritionalist and also a certified personal trainer as well. And I know you have more of those. So welcome, Sarah, to the Friends You Keep.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited for our chat today.
Me too. I'm glad I could finally get you on the show. So let's kind of start from the beginning, because we've actually worked together on other webinars. We've done some things together. We have some stuff coming up we're going to talk about later. But let's kind of start from the beginning. What motivated you to specialize in women's health? What really led to that?
So it's kind of a story. I actually thought I wanted to be a lawyer when I was younger. I would say my whole life growing up, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. And then I went to my first semester of law school. Well, not law school, but doing an undergrad, so criminology. And I was like, yep, that is not for me. And at the time, my mom actually had cancer. And so she had been seeing all, the top cancer doctors. And just, cancer is a pretty big emotional burden. And
Mhm.
she was feeling kind of defeated in it all. And then someone recommended she go see a naturopath. And so she went there. And I remember her coming home and seeing the change in her energy. And she was so excited. She's like, oh my gosh, did you know that there's these things I can change with what I'm eating? Like, if I can cut out sugar and I'm going to feel better, and this, that, and the other thing. And I saw the change that it was able to make in her and to give her hope. And I was like, I want to do that for people. So I
Right.
switched from doing criminology to studying biology and science in school. I've always loved science and the human body and found it really fascinating. And that then led me to go to school for nutrition and Western herbal medicine, so phytotherapy. Then when I was at school, we had clinics. So we would sit in with our teachers who are all practitioners, and we would just listen to people in clinic. And I was like, man, why is it so many women that are coming in? And now that is a little bit of, self-selecting. Women are more likely to seek out help for their problems than males. But at the same time, it was like client after client, patient after patient were coming in with hormone issues, digestive issues, and then just talking to your friends. Like, a lot of people go to school for health related things because of their own struggles. And I was like, why are women so sick? And nowadays,
Mhm.
more than ever, there's wellness this, wellness that. Health is everywhere. Hormones this, hormones that, digestive health. But women are getting sicker and sicker. So I wanted to really hone in on answering the question of, like, why are we so unwell? And
Mhm.
then I really thought about it and realized that women are not taught how to take care of our bodies. It's still pretty taboo to talk about periods. I mean, the sex ed that we get when we're in school is like, you talk about anal sex more than you talk about phases of your menstrual cycle, which is kind of whack when you think about it. And women just aren't given a lot of education. And then we live in a world where, getting unwell or getting sick is actually the default. If you
Mhm.
aren't taking an active stance and, being mindful of what you're putting into your body, what you're putting onto your body, what you're surrounding yourself with, we are in like a toxic soup with
Mhm.
our food, with our beauty products, and with especially like beauty standards of like running yourself into the ground. The girl boss who has to work so hard and also train. And it really comes down to lack of education and knowledge for women to take care of their body. So my goal and my company's goal is really to help teach and empower and educate women how to take care of themselves in a world where that's a big missing piece. So
Mhm.
I have a long story. I like started and then I just specialized, and now I feel really happy and proud to be able to do that and to help women learn how to take care of their bodies.
I love that. And what do you like? So when we look at, I mean, we'll kind of go into hormone health because that's kind of one of the specialties that you really deal with. What do you think is the most important issue facing women in related to hormone health? Like what's something you see in your practice more so than anything, I guess?
I would say a lot of it comes down to this big word of stress. And, a lot of women think of stress as just how I feel in my mind. And people will be like, well, I'm not that stressed. And I'm like, yeah, but you're training twice a day, 6 times a week, doing HIIT workouts, and you're under eating, or you're working a job where you're pretty much working, 12 hours a day, and you have kids and you have a family and you're always on the go, and you don't know how to relax. Like you say, if you sit down, you feel weird. So it's kind of a mix, but I would say a lot of it comes down to nutrient deficiencies. So either women could be under eating, or maybe they're just eating a little bit too much but not getting the right food. It also comes down to, psychological stress is a big one, training, and then their environment that they're exposed to. So that extends to like people around them, their jobs, as well as like beauty products, toxins in our environment. And all of these really impact females and our hormones. I would say a lot of the information that's out there is also misinformation.
Mhm.
And I work with a lot of women who are in like their 30s, 40s, even into their 50s, and they grew up hearing all of these like diet trends. And then those over time, like low fat, low carb, have actually pushed them into hormone imbalances. So,
Mhm.
really, I would say this giant bucket of stress, which also goes to like a whole bunch of different subcategories.
Well, I think too, if I, when I look back, I mean, for me, health, even though I was in the industry for so many years, health was how big I was my size of my scale. Like, and I think that was the messaging that was really taught to us was health. And that is a component, obviously, that there's a component to being a healthy weight, but that was kind of the marker for me, right? Like how lean I was, how small I was, because that was the messaging I think we were taught. And I think now the beauty of it too, if I look at Michaela, she doesn't she doesn't look at it that way, which is really fascinating. I guess I've done a good job in that regard. She's very like, this is who I am, and she's good in who she is, which I love. But I think that was a big messaging for me for so long. And so in that, if you're constantly trying to seek that being smaller, then you're not eating the right foods, then you're working out too much, then you're not paying attention to your stress levels, because that's not it. It's I need to get in a size, 8 gene or 10 gene, right? Which I think has changed too. Slowly, I think that's evolving. So
I would say yes and no. Like
yeah.
it's evolving in the sense that, it's not as strong messaging as before. But I would also say that nowadays more and more women are experiencing issues with their weight due to like hypothyroidism, obesity,
Mhm.
all these other things going on. And then I often see clients like that who are like severely under eating, trying to lose weight, and
Yeah.
then they're making their situation worse,
Even
right? So
worse.
they have something like type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, hypothyroidism, pretty common to see those going together in clients. And then they're like, okay, well, their doctor tells them, well, you need to lose weight. So then what do? They restrict their food, but then they're like under eating. What is it that usually people cut out? Carbs. Okay, well, your thyroid needs carbs to function. So now you've made your hypothyroidism worse. Their thyroid labs get worse, and they're
Mhm.
gaining weight still. And they're like, what the F is
What's
going
going
on,
on?
right?
Yeah.
So I think that it really comes down to also women not knowing how to get the support they need. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of lack of support in the medical system. And again, we have to consider that, I talk a lot about doctors and how they don't give the best support. And at the same time, your doctor has about 7 minutes with you. Your doctor cannot go
So
into a
true.
full in depth analysis asking you about your history, what you're eating. Really, like a doctor is for, can I prescribe you something or refer you to a specialist in this 8 minutes that I have with you? So that's a big issue. And many people go to their doctor looking for answers and don't necessarily know that that actually might not be the best place or the only place they should be seeking help. I'm
Yeah.
really big on teams of practitioners. So
Mhm.
I work with my clients and their doctor and their naturopath and
Yeah.
their specialist. But at the same time, it's like women are going in when their hormone issues are maybe starting, like, hey, I have painful periods, or I'm feeling so tired, my hair is falling out. And their doctor runs a set of standard labs. Now you're fine. And then they go on, and over time, now they get really
Mhm.
unwell. Like thyroid's a really great example. I think the stat is it takes about 10 years of your thyroid plummeting for your TSH, which is what doctors use, thyroid stimulating hormone, to
Yeah.
tell you whether or not your thyroid is fine. It takes about 10 years for that to really
Wow.
get affected in hypothyroidism. So oftentimes patients will go to a doctor around year like 2 or 3. I'm tired all the time. I'm gaining weight. My hair is falling out. I'm cold. Maybe they have irregular periods, bloating, constipation, all these low thyroid symptoms. Their doctor looks at one marker, which isn't a thyroid hormone, it's from your brain, and says, everything looks fine. You're normal. So then the person's like, maybe I'm okay. Maybe it is in my head. Maybe nothing's
Mhm.
wrong. Or they just think, well, they've exhausted their list of places to get help. And now over time, the issue is still there. They're probably still doing the exact same damn thing that might have been causing it. And now we see them like 7, 8 years later, and then they go on Synthroid because they're hypothyroid or they're Hashimoto's or they
Yeah.
can't get pregnant, they have infertility. So I also think that there's a lack of resources and support for people because they try to go to the medical system when they feel these hormone imbalances. And hormone imbalances, unless they can be seen in lab work or they're one of like the 10 things doctors really look at, they're not taken seriously. And
Mhm.
then clients don't know what to do, or they think that, maybe this is just normal and okay. And a lot of the messaging around stuff like period issues is actually that you should have painful periods. PMS should
Mhm.
suck. So it's lack of education, misinformation, and also lack of support for these women that's really causing big issues. And that's why they don't get caught until the person is like very, very unwell.
Yeah.
Whereas if they, a lot of these people were actually listened to in clinic, or, doctors would say, like, hey, this didn't show up in your TSH, but, if you're experiencing these issues, maybe you could go see a nutritionist, or I can refer you out to this person. But
Yeah.
instead, they're just being told, you're fine.
Yeah.
The reason they're in your office is because they're not friggin' fine.
They're not fine at
So,
all. And so
yeah.
what are some of the symptoms? I know some of the symptoms, but what are some of the symptoms that your hormones are out of whack? What would you say to somebody if they're like, okay, what I need to go into the doctor with? What are some things that can really get maybe some, I guess, results from him that are not just you're just fine? What would be some of the symptoms they need to look for?
Okay, so let's talk about what doctors need in order to send you for labs, because I think this
Mhm.
is an important discussion.
Yeah.
It's really easy to say, like, oh, well, my doctor didn't run this, but you really can't. Some doctors will do this, but it would be really difficult to go into a doctor and be like, hey, I want to get my hormones tested. Why? Well, I just want to see where they're at. Your doctor is not going to do that, and it's not necessarily on them, because if they send you for blood work, they need to have notes in their file from your visit that gives insurance a reason why they sent you. So for
Mhm.
example, if I went in there and said, hey, I'm really pale all the time, I'm feeling dizzy, I'm low energy, and I ask for to get my iron checked, my doctor is going to say fine, because it matches the symptoms that would send them for the test. Now with hormones, it's a little bit different because honestly, doctors don't know a lot about all the nuances of female hormones unless they have done their own research there. And so they have like a list of things that they know that they can treat. Otherwise, they refer you to a gynecologist. So it has to be pretty severe for them to send you to blood work. Doctors will often try to put women on birth control before sending them for lab testing, because
Mhm.
a lot of doctors are under the belief that hormone testing doesn't matter because your hormones are always fluctuating, which is BS, considering you want to test your hormones in your luteal phase because your hormones are testing. And if you've ever got blood work, hormone testing done from your doctor, there is reference ranges for where you're at in your cycle. So they know when you're interpreting that they're fluctuating, and they've accounted for that in the reference
Mhm.
ranges. Yet still some doctors will tell you that it doesn't matter because your hormones are always fluctuating, or that if you have a period, your hormones are fine. And this is, again, just misinformation. It's not true. And it's just a lack of education on some of the doctors on females in their premenstrual years. So how would you get it from your doctor? Your symptoms do have to be pretty severe. And again, it is quite difficult to get hormones especially tested. I would say in women who are still having a cycle, your doctor will almost always try to put you on birth control before testing anything and say that it will fix your hormones or it will balance your hormones or whatever. But if you went in there and said, hey, it pretty much has to be changing your life, or
Mhm.
your quality of life is impacted
Yeah.
quite severely by your hormones for them to run a lab. So it could be you have PMDD, and 2 weeks out
Mhm.
of the month you are extremely depressed and can't go to work. You're maybe having suicidal thoughts. that might be a reason they could consider testing it. They'll probably still try to put you on birth control.
Or antidepressants.
Yeah. Extremely heavy, painful periods where you're bleeding a lot. But I have a client who is bleeding an insane amount where she's getting dizzy, she's anemic due to her periods. I believe she has a fibroid or a cyst or something, and her doctors won't test her because they say
My
you've
God.
always had this. So honestly, there's no straight answer because it really depends on the doctor and who you're seeing. But in general, it does have to be pretty severe or intense for them to test your hormones. You can also request to pay. So I got a thyroid panel done. You do have to get thyroid hormones tested in the blood. It's not like a saliva or a urine test you can do. And as a relatively healthy young woman, my doctor said no, and I said I'll pay out of pocket for it. Like it's not going to be covered under MSP. And he said Life Labs won't run it, and I said they will if I pay. And he said okay. And I'm like, can we go back to the fact you just tried to
Yeah,
lie
no
to me and say
kidding.
that Life Labs
No
gonna run it?
kidding.
Because I know that they will run it. So you can ask to pay, and some doctors will do that. It's a couple $100s for it. But if you were going to pay for something, functional testing can be more in depth. And honestly, it's just really hard to get hormones tested by a doctor.
That is
Very hard.
so crazy. That is so crazy. And just the fact, I mean, and I guess the big message here is advocating for your health. If you feel something is off, if you, like I did the PCOS conversation today, and even it's the same thing with PCOS, you really have to show, all these different markers that are quite severe in order for you to even get a test done. But in that, constantly advocating, if your doctor's not going to do it, then go find another doctor, or really make sure that you're just fighting him on it and that he'll do it. I'm actually pretty lucky. My doctor will do kind of whatever I want. So I'm lucky in that way, listening to this. But I think that's the big message, is learning to really advocate for ourselves. If anything ever feels off, right? We look at Paige, my girlfriend, who, her doctor told her not everything was fine. Everything's fine. And she went back and she goes, everything's not fine. She found out she had lymphatic cancer. So she really made a point of advocating for herself. And she said the messages she has received just on social media, how many times these girls have come to her even and said, I was feeling the same thing. Something was off. My doctor wouldn't listen to me. So the big take home here too, anybody listening, if you are feeling off, advocate for yourself and fight for it. I guess that's the big thing, right? Is so
Yeah.
important.
Another important thing to note is that your doctor, when they swear into being a doctor, is responsible to protect the health of the public. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They protect the health of the public. So if you were to go into your doctor and you were to say like, hey, I really want to get this test, something's really off, and they don't test you, and it comes on later that you have something seriously, they are liable
Mm-hmm.
for your health issues because they refused you. So another thing is, when you ask your doctor for something and they refuse you, it's important to say, I'd like you to write down in my chart that on this day I asked you for this reason, and you said no. And then
Smart.
doctors go, oh, this person knows that I'm going to be liable, because they could easily just say no, and you're on to the next one. If they have to actually think about, is it possible that this person could have something, and if I don't do that, that comes down on me. If depending on the severity, they could lose their license to practice over that. So that's a pretty big deal.
That's a
And
great thing to do. That's a
yeah,
great piece of advice for women.
your doctor works for you to
For
help you.
you. Yeah,
You pay your
exactly.
taxes, right? We're in
Yep.
Canada. If you're listening
Yep.
in the States, you pay to go probably.
Yep.
But you pay your taxes for your doctor to help you in your health journey.
100%.
And it's important to note that, and not just like let yourself be, walked all
Walked
over.
over. Yep.
Yeah. I will say that for women who are going through like perimenopause or postmenopausal, it's actually easier to get your hormones tested.
Yeah.
Doctors will often run your
Yeah.
hormones. So
Yeah,
yeah.
they will.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I got one done. I got a panel done when I was 40, and then I just got done one recently as well, just so I can really kind of see where I'm at as I'm going into perimenopause, because I'm definitely noticing that I'm on the verge of almost there. I'm trying to
Hang on for your life.
I'm on for my life. It's actually really interesting. Because I was in Toronto recently talking about it, and I had like my own kind of like a complete anxiety attack in the morning time, and just like, what am I doing? And what if just like this whole thing, I was laying in bed, I had to really ground myself, do my affirmations, went to the gym that morning, lifted heavy, which always helps me because it really grounds me when I'm training. And then of course I was thinking after, I'm like, of course my progesterone levels are dropping, and it's such a common thing too. And when I talked to the women that night, I'm like, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling out of sorts, if all of a sudden you're second guessing yourself, our progesterone levels are dropping. It's normal to feel that way. It's
Mhm.
normal to, so allowing yourself grace as well in that period of time of going through that. So that was kind of something that I found I have to constantly remind myself when I'm having a little bit of anxious moments. I'm like, okay, it's all good. It's my hormones. And I think that's once you know that and you're equipped with the knowledge of what's going on in your body, then you can react in a different way. But that's the big thing is understanding and advocating for yourself so you know what's going on. Right. So what are some simple actions women can take if, let's just say they just want to make sure they have really good hormonal health. So let's say maybe they don't have anything that's out of the normal. Maybe they have a little PMS. What are some things that you really kind of recommend, maybe top 5 or something like that, that you recommend to women to do to take care of themselves?
Right. So number one is managing stress. And this is actually something that I've changed a lot in the way that I think about helping women over the years of practicing. I used to be, I love science. I love protocols. We're going to create the most badass protocol. It's going to be perfect. I'm going to look at all your labs. I'm going to look at everything you're doing. And then you have patients who are chronically stressed. And I'm like, none of this shit matters. This person, none of it matters unless the person is stressed. I have had clients who are like, they almost get they want to follow the protocol to a T at the point that it's causing them more stress. And I have to tell them like, this is actually detrimental. How closely you want to follow this to the point where you're giving yourself anxiety over like the minute details of this. So stress management's number one. We need to support our nervous system. You cannot heal, and your hormones will not be stable in a state of fight or flight. So now
Mhm.
that's kind of like an eye roll, like don't stress, right? What the fuck does that mean? So that can come down to a few different things. I would say nervous system support. We'll talk about that. So there's daily things you can do for your nervous system and also scheduling and rest. So you shouldn't have a schedule that's go, go, go all the time, 24/7, 7 days a week. You need downtime. So
Mhm.
downtime in your schedule. I personally really love breath work for nervous system support.
Mhm.
Meditation is another classic example. I find with clients who are high stress or they do have like anxiety or their mind is going a million miles a minute, to ask them to sit down and meditate causes them more stress because they're like all of these thoughts and their nervous system can't be still. So it's kind of counterproductive. I
Mhm.
think everybody can get there, but I think breath work is really great because it works on, breathing, stimulating your vagus nerve. Journaling is really great, getting outside in nature. You can do yoga. So something that's going to support your nervous system, really important. Sleep, 7 to 9 hours of night
Mhm.
of undisturbed sleep. Sleep quality is also really important, and the time you sleep. So going to bed at 3 in the morning and waking up at 10 a.m. is a lot different than going to bed at 10 and waking up at 5. So we do
Mhm.
want to try to go to bed. Honestly, around 10 o'clock is pretty good. The research shows us get 7 to 9 hours for women, especially around your period. 8 to 9 is probably pretty good for you. Uh, Stress management, sleep, nutrition, really important, obviously, as a nutritionist. So, with that, there's a lot you can get into, but generally speaking, blood sugar stability is really important. So many nuances there, I'm not going to get into them, but generally speaking, we can balance our meals. I find a lot of women undereat protein severely. So, we do want to be having at least like 30, honestly, 40 grams of protein a meal. So, what does that look like? 2 eggs is not enough protein. A
Mhm.
sprinkle of hemp hearts on your oatmeal with a little bit of peanut butter is not enough protein. You really want to focus on, again, like 30 to 40 grams. So you could do a smoothie with some whey protein and some collagen in it. If you're not having dairy, you could do vegan protein and collagen in it. You could do like eggs and a couple sausages or eggs and egg whites in the morning. Really mineral dense sources of protein are great. So, like egg yolks. I love red meat. I eat red meat every
Mhm.
single day, often
I
twice a
do too.
day.
I do too.
Red meat's really good. Shrimp it has zinc in it. So really trying to look up, if you don't know what 30 grams of protein looks like, it's not 30 grams if you put shrimp on a scale. You can look it up online, or you can use an app like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal and just type it in and figure out amount of protein for certain foods that you eat. We do want to have enough carbs. Carbs are really important for progesterone, thyroid hormone, giving us energy. Low carb diets are actually a big source of physiological stress for females. Healthy fats, really important for our sex hormones, our steroid hormones. They're made from cholesterol. So we need healthy fats and then some sort of fiber. So like fruit, veggies, whatever you like.
Mhm.
And that would be a balanced meal. Most women need to eat every 3 to 4-ish hours to keep their blood sugar stable. Some people can go like 4 to 5. It's pretty individual, but really trying to have those consistent meals, not skipping breakfast. So many women start their day, they have coffee, pre workout, go train, and they don't eat till later. Totally fine if you are postmenopause, go for it. It actually works really well for people in your menstrual years. Not great. Another big source of stress. So, eating before you train in the morning, if you do, and eating breakfast within 60 to 90 minutes. So, blood sugar stability, balanced meals, eating breakfast, and then just what you're eating. So, whole
Mhm.
foods. I'm really big on minerals. If you follow my page, I'm like mineral mommy over here. So, we really want to get in as many minerals as we can. Reason being is they're like spark plugs for everything we do.
Mhm.
You know, how do you make thyroid hormone? You require minerals. How do we convert stuff? You need minerals. How do we make sex hormones? You need minerals, you know? So we really have to be getting that in our food. It's not just about getting enough calories per se, but also what are those calories coming from? So they
Oh,
support us on a base level. Really big for energy too. Like we need minerals for energy production. If you remember the Krebs cycle, remember
mhm.
that crazy thing we all learned in high school that you probably pushed out of your brain? There's a lot of minerals on that sucker if you look it up. So that's really important from a nutrition standpoint. And then nutrition movement is really important too.
Mhm.
So moving your body, that's going to look different for everyone. I don't believe in the whole like females shouldn't train hard. I train hard. My hormones are fine. You need to be eating enough in order to train hard. I do think that, you know, we can all tune into our body and see how we feel at different phases of our cycle. If you're struggling with hormone issues, you probably might want to scale back on like more intense
Mhm.
workouts. Strength training's great all cycle long.
Mhm.
Yoga's great. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing cardio in the right amount for the right person. However, you like moving is the best way to move,
Yeah.
right? Everything else is like let the details sort themselves out. Moving your body daily, and I would say those are foundations, and having good people around you.
Mhm.
So surrounding yourself with people who are good for you. There's people who are definitely bad for your hormones. You know, when you're just like, ugh, like your initial feeling to hanging around someone, or the friends who are always gossiping and always complaining, and you're like, whoa. So really, like being around people and a strong community of people who make you feel good and
Yeah.
make you
Yep.
happy.
100%. And I know you offer hormone testing. What can you talk about the hormone testing you offer? We've already talked about when somebody should have their hormones tested. Obviously, if you're really feeling things are out of balance, or your doctor won't test with you, then maybe looking at somebody like yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about the testing that you offer?
Yeah, so kind of going back to the foundations that I just talked about,
Hmm.
I don't love to start testing somebody if they aren't doing the foundations. The reason
Smart.
being, I have a lot of women who come in 10 out of 10 period pain, irregular periods, acne, fatigue, issues with weight loss. And if I was to test somebody's hormones and they're not eating well, they're not managing their stress, they're not sleeping, they're not moving their body, what it would be the first thing that I do when I get their results back? Have them do the foundations.
Yeah.
It makes more
Smart.
sense to do the foundations for a while. I noticed that a lot of women are like, oh my gosh, my periods aren't painful anymore. So we always want to do the foundations first. I don't want somebody to pay for a test. And then if it's the changes that are really simple and they implement them, that get rid of all their problems. I
Yeah.
first want
Smart.
you to have good habits that set your hormone health up for the rest of your life. And then when you do that for a while, still some people need testing, right? So then if you wanted to run a test, people are paying out of pocket. So as a practitioner, my question is always, how is this test going to change the way that I treat this person?
Hmm.
If the answer is it won't, or I don't know, I probably tell the person, we can do this test if you want, but I'm letting you know that, there might be other tests better, or that we should do this first. And most people really respect that because I'm not
Yeah.
here to take somebody's money and run a test for the hell of it. But let's say I have a lot of clients who are actually doing all the things, and they're doing great, but they still feel they have, you know, anxiety around their period, or they have irregular periods, whatever it may be, low sex drive. So there's different types of hormone testing you can run in the functional space. They have saliva tests, which are great. And then more recent, they also have dried urine tests. So
Mhm.
saliva tests are pretty good. They'll let you know the levels of your hormones. So we have like adrenal hormones, cortisol, which should be measured at 4 points throughout the day so you can see your cortisol response. We want to have cortisol be higher in the morning and then go lower in the evening. So if you only take 1 point on that graph, you don't know how the rest of your cortisol is throughout the day. And then it will do sex hormones as well. So like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And that would give you that. Dried urine testing, so the Dutch test is a pretty classic example, is the one that I do most with clients. The reason being is it gives you all of that. So it gives you your cortisol throughout the day. It also shows you estrogen metabolites. I've done a whole podcast on estrogen metabolism, and it's quite complex. So if somebody has, let's say, a history of breast cancer in their family or endometriosis, we don't only want to see the level of estrogen, but we also want to see what your body's doing with it.
Mhm.
Same for PCOS. We don't only want to see the level of testosterone, but we want to see if you have a more androgenic pathway preference, if your body's pushing more towards the metabolites. So when your body's taking testosterone, it's making it more potent, essentially, for colloquial terms.
Mhm.
So we want to see what your body's doing and how it's processing. So dried urine testing can also show metabolites, and that specific test has other markers. So indicants, so some into digestion, organic acids, and it really just gives you more than you would get in blood work. But I will also say that there are some markers that are better done in blood work. So it's really best if someone is really, really struggling and they've done all the things and they're kind of stuck, you would want to get both. So I would run like a Dutch test with somebody, and I would also ask them to get something like sex hormone binding globulin with their doctor and a full thyroid panel. So sometimes it's not one or the other, it's both that come together. And my practice, I'm really big on each person as an individual. So we always want to look at the person, what would be better for them. You know, if a client is just like having issues with maybe their adrenals, but their sex hormones are pretty fine, they might actually only want to do the saliva testing for adrenals. So
Yeah.
there's different options. And I think what's really important as a like client or patient is to work with somebody who's going to work with you as an
Mhm.
individual, and that
100%.
doesn't just want to like, okay, run all these tests. You know, some practitioners won't work with you until you pay for 5 tests. I'm like, I won't pay.
Yeah.
I don't have any
Yeah.
client to pay for a test unless I've done
That's
like
smart.
some base work with them, right? So I
Yeah.
think it's important to find somebody that you also connect with really well,
Mhm.
because you do want to be able to be open and honest and make sure that you feel like the person you're working with has your best interest in mind. I think
Exactly.
that's so important, and it can be really hard because people want answers like now. Whoever will
Mhm.
help me, like I have clients all the time. They're like, I'm just desperate for someone to help me. And I'm like, okay, but we don't really want to go into this with the energy of
Yeah.
desperation. Let's talk about this. We do want to make sure we feel really good. But those are
Yeah.
some tests that are available in the functional space. I personally run tests on myself every year. I think they're extremely valuable. We want to see
Yeah.
where we are. And if you're
100%.
somebody who maybe feels healthy and is listening to this, and you can get blood work done with your doctor, I think it's really important too, because as we age, when things feel off, we want to be able to look back at where we were when we
100%.
felt good and then see the
100%.
differences. I don't give a shit about the normal reference
Yeah.
range.
It's how
I care
you
about
felt.
my
Yeah,
good.
100%. 100%. And that's
Yeah.
like one of the reasons I've done testing sporadically throughout the years too, because looking
Mhm.
at where I was in my 40s and now as I'm going to my 50s, how that's going to play out and how when I felt my best and how I optimally feel my best ongoing. So it's so true. And so if somebody wants to work with you, where do they find you for one? So let's give some plugs here because I know you do coaching,
Shameless
obviously.
plug. Okay, so
Shameless plug away.
my Instagram is Sarah Collins Wellness. Even if you don't want to work with me, I put out lots of information
Tons
on
of
female
content.
health every single day. I'm on there. I'm talking about the things that nobody wants to talk about, poo, periods. I'm catching all the shade from weird guys online saying I shouldn't talk about poo online for you guys.
It just
So
makes you want to talk about poo even more.
really good if you want to learn. And then my company is Embodied Wellness Co. On our website, we have different offerings. So I do just like testing plus consulting. I also do private coaching. We are going to be putting out some really incredible courses in the upcoming. You
Yay!
guys are the first to hear. One of the first ones we're putting out is actually a birth control course. So we're
Nice.
going to go through every option of birth control, the pill, the ring, both
Amazing.
IUDs, and talk about the pros and the cons of each. Many people don't know things like copper IUDs still impact your
Hmm.
hormones. So
Yep.
pros and cons of each, how to transition off if you want to, and then also how to use natural birth control and fertility
Mm,
awareness methods. So I'm really
sounds
excited about
valuable.
that. Keep your eyes
Super
peeled if you're
amazing.
interested. And yeah, those are the best
That's
places
really
to go.
funny. All right. Well, we're also going to be on the road. Sarah and I are taking the show on the road. No, we're going to be up in Vernon
Road
on
trip.
May road trip, May 16th. We're having at Nature's Fair. We're going to be talking all things hormones. We have a hormone panel there. Really excited, not a tested panel, but a hormone panel. We're talking. So I'm really excited about that. So if you do live in Vernon, please come out and see us. We're going to be there on May 16th. May 17th, we're going to be in Kelowna speaking there. And then we're actually coming down to the coast and we're going to be in Langley on the mainland on May 30th. So it's going to be a really exciting evening. There's going to be giveaways and samples and of course specials in store. And if you're interested in Air and Wellness products, you can buy them there. And you can also bring all your questions hormone related. If you have questions, there is nothing that is not okay to ask. So please come out and enjoy the conversation for the night. So I wanted to, let's see, I've got a little bit of time here. So I'm going to ask you some personal stuff. So we have to go through these ones fast because I don't want it to cut off on us. And this, I don't know if this is a short one, but where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I want to have a family of my own, at least be
Mm-hmm.
starting that. And I think
Yep.
my business is going to move really towards educating on larger scales. So I mentioned the
Yep.
courses. I do want to have YouTubes and really focus on educating on larger scales. Private coaching is great, but obviously I'm
Yep.
limited as one person and how many people I can impact. So courses, education, and impacting millions.
I see it. I see it. What is one thing now you're in your 20s, I believe still. So I don't know if this is what's one thing you would tell your 20-year-old self?
More is not better. I was the person I described who's go, go, go all the
Yeah.
time, under eating, over exercising, thinking that I need to go as hard as I can to prove myself in my way through life. And I made myself really unwell. I had like menopausal hormone levels at the age of like 23. And that's also why I'm like so adamant on this
Mm,
because I was that person. And they say you're best equipped to help the person you once were.
there you go. And what inspires you?
I'm inspired by my clients. I'm inspired by education. I like looking at other women who are also doing incredible things. I'm inspired by seeing the change you can make in people's lives,
Mm,
even with like, I give somebody a free piece of information on Instagram and then they come back and they're like, this changed my life. I'm like,
yeah.
awesome. I'm inspired when people want to make changes for their health because it is not easy. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
I'm
not
an easily
easy.
inspired person.
And I guess that's it. I guess, oh, there we go. See, my even alarm went off
We made
there.
it through.
It's like you're done.
Other rapid
Um,
fire. Let's go.
So first off, thank you so much for coming on. This has been amazing. I absolutely love chatting with you, and I look forward to us being on the road together. It's going to be a lot of fun. And everybody follow Sarah. Sarah gives so much of a wealth of knowledge. You won't regret it. Give her a follow on her Instagram. Check out her webpage. And if you're interested in coaching, I highly, highly recommend working with Sarah. So thanks so much, Sarah. And I guess I
Thanks
will
for having
see
me.
you. I'll see you in the next,
I'll see you next week.
I'll see you next week. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Where's my stop? I gotta like pause. There we go. Stop.